So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Raji, and welcome to the Fireside Chat event on enabling access to finance and carbon markets for clean cooking sector today. I have been working with UNCDF and Clean Cooking Alliance on this Digital Innovations Challenge. And apart from that, a new initiative called Global Financial Sector Partnership for Clean Cooking. In terms of the Digital Innovation Challenge, let me just give you a brief about it, as part of which we are organizing these Fireside Chat events. The first we had organized on 27th of April, which was on data and digitization, enhancing and expanding the markets of clean cooking sector. And today we would be stressing more and focusing more on the financial side of things. Can we have the next slide, please? So the Digital Innovations Challenge that we launched around 14th of April, and it's closing 7th May as of now, has a twin goal. One is, of course, to look into what kind of innovations are able to ease access to finance in terms of public funded output programs, base finance programs, carbon markets, commercial credit markets, through both increasing the availability and amount of this financing and also reducing the transaction cost or the associated costs. And the other goal in terms of improving transparency and accuracy of data across the clean cooking supply chain, including for the financial decision making, with a focus of moving towards more quality products and standardized key performance indicators for the sector. The way we have structured the Digital Innovation Challenge, we have highlighted and focused on 4 areas of the innovations that we are looking at and would like to see applications from digital solution providers. So one is, of course, looking into how to look into digital services that can improve data collection and monitoring, which would be meter technology, IoT platforms, as examples, looking into the business processes, looking at CRM, supply chains, market data aggregator platforms, etc. Looking into carbon financing in terms of carbon credit markets, market platforms, financial intermediaries there, and overall looking into the investment and financing aspect of how credit assessment platforms and other kind of digital solutions are enabling clean cooking companies and others to access finance. And in terms of implementing this Digital Innovation Challenge, we have 3 stages of support, which is sequential in nature. The first is organizing a boot camp with selected participants, selected applicants, I should say. Around 19th of June, a 3-day boot camp is being organized. And on the 3rd day, we will have a pitching session done by the selected applicants. And based on the pitching session, post the boot camp, selected applicants would be going to the accelerator stage. The accelerator stage is basically a 6-month duration time frame where the selected applicants are able to test out on the ground the projects that they have submitted under this Digital Innovation Challenge. And once they have been able to sort out, troubleshoot, and kind of risk mitigate elements of their projects in a 6 months time frame, then they go through the scale-up period, and the scale-up period can vary from 1 to 3 years in nature. So coming to this Fireside Chat event, let me introduce 2 esteemed speakers. Juliette Casson, she graduated with a double master's in environmental engineering from the French Engineering School Central Marseille and the Portuguese University Instituto Superior Técnico. After working for an NGO in Boston at the beginning of her career, she then spent a couple of years in a French renewable energy merger and acquisition company. Juliette joined Canopy Energies as a project developer in 2002, and now develops and manages various types of carbon projects, including clean cooking solutions, distribution, or boreholes rehabilitation. Juliette successfully developed clean cooking projects in Rwanda and Cameroon by supervising the collaboration between a wide range of actors and partners, which includes, for example, NGOs, manufacturers, certifying standards, external auditors, and local beneficiaries. Canopy Energies also holds projects in other developing countries like Madagascar or Haiti, which she contributes to from the headquarters in Paris. Our second speaker is Farai Sekeso. He is an executive director at Lions Head Global Partners and fund lead of the Africa Go Green Fund, AGG in short, as we call Africa Go Green Fund. So AGG is an Africa-focused credit and seeks to support businesses and projects that reduce greenhouse gases and improve energy efficiency. Clean cooking is one of the areas AGG seeks to support. Prior to joining Lions Head, Farai was a director at Fieldstone Capital, where he was responsible for execution of transaction in the energy and infrastructure across Africa, and has 15 years of experience in advising on and financing African businesses. He holds an MBA and is a chartered accountant. So thanks, Farai, and thanks, Juliet, for being part of this session. And to go forward with the discussions we are supposed to have. So Farai and Juliet, thanks once again and for joining us. And to start with, just for the benefit of our participants, can you briefly outline the work of your organization in terms of, the products and services that's being offered, partnerships and countries in Africa that you operate in? Let us start with Juliet, if you can just talk more about Canopy Energies so that the participants can understand in terms of the work that Canopy Energies are doing. And then I'll come to Farai. Over to you.
So hello, everybody. And thank you, Rajiv, for the introduction. And thank you, Rajiv and Rose, for having me today as a speaker. As Rajiv said, I am a project developer for a French company, which is called Canopy Energy. Canopy was born in 2008 and started by developing solar power plants in developing countries. From working in developing countries, the partners of Canopy identified all the different needs in these rural areas. And then our activities transformed a little bit. So today we focus on two different themes. The first mission that we set for ourselves is to produce carbon-free energy. So for example, we developed and operate a factory in Cameroon that produces pellets from waste. And our second mission is to develop projects that either avoid greenhouse gas emissions or sequester a large amount of CO2. So when it comes to sequestration projects, it's mainly reforestation and afforestation. We have large projects, for example, in Madagascar, and another one that is about to start in Ivory Coast. And when it comes to avoidance projects, the principle is quite the same, but pretty simple. For each ton of CO2 that we can prove our projects prevented from emitted, we obtain a carbon credit that we then sell to reimburse our investment. And as you understood, clean cooking projects, so clean cook stoves or clean fuels, can reduce emission of greenhouse gases, so they enter that scope. You asked about where we were working, Rajiv, and most of our projects are located in Africa. Not all of them. We still have a reforestation project in Paraguay. And regarding clean cooking projects, we mainly operate in Rwanda, in Cameroon, and in Madagascar. And so, as you understood, I'll be answering the questions from a project developer point of view.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Juliet. Farai, over to you, if you can share a bit about Africa Green activities.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks again, Rajiv and the Clean Cooking Alliance team for having me here. So as Rajiv has said, I lead the Africa Go Green Fund, which is a credit fund that's solely focused on Africa. And our objective is to support businesses and projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions or promote energy efficiency. We do that by looking at 4 broad sectors: green transport, green buildings, industrial energy efficiency, and green appliances and solutions. Within the green appliances and solutions sort of pillar or bucket is where we look at clean cooking solutions. And we refer to clean cooking as things that is efficient cook stoves, or even using LPG as a alternative fuel to charcoal and firewood, for instance. We work right across the African continent. So there we look for investments and assess investments across all of the African continent. And to date, we have supported one clean cooking project. This is public information. We've supported Bbox with the rollout of the LPG cooking initially in DRC, and now it's growing into places such as Rwanda and Kenya. And so we provide debt financing in the form of senior loans. We can also do mezzanine type financing, and we also provide the financing both in hard currency or local currencies, subject to us being able to hedge ourselves appropriately. So happy to answer any other questions that arise as they relate to the Africa Go Green Fund, but I am excited to hear more about this digitization and how it all supports clean cooking going forward. So thanks again.
Thank you, Farai. Thanks, Juliet, for sharing about your organization activities. Farai, coming to you, let's start with kind of understanding from your perspective as a financier, investor, and from Juliet's perspective later as a carbon project developer. In terms of the digitization and data availability to inform your decision making as a financier, that you look forward as a prerequisite that clean cooking companies can have. So what prerequisites you look at in terms of digitization and data availability to inform your decisions of financing from the clean cooking companies or other projects that you have?
Yeah, thanks. So I think it goes to, one of the things you said in one of the slides, which is it goes to transparency and accuracy, right? I think a lot of what is important for us as a financier when you're providing a loan, which is what we do, is having access to information and data in a manner that you can analyze it and get comfortable with the accuracy and the transparency of that information. Now, in terms of prerequisites that we have, I mean, to us, as a bare minimum, we'd want to be able to transmit and share and also assess information in a digital form. It just makes it that much simpler, right? Because we work with a number of various advisors that we work with, and it is important for a clean cooking company to be able to show us, for instance, historical financial information. It is important for them to be able to show us historical performance, say, of their customer book, for instance. It is important for them to be able to show us how they are thinking about the growth and evolution of their customer book. All of those things allow us to then make an assessment from an analytical point of view, which, if you're not digitized, becomes very difficult, right? So I think our prerequisites, we don't ask for much, but we want information at a bare minimum to be capable of being transmitted electronically, to be able to be assessed in a manner that is dynamic and allows for transparency. I mean, with my background as an auditor, I know you go to companies and you get reams and reams and reams of files to look at. And if you're trying to make a financing decision, and you're looking at multiple opportunities, having digital information, having data available, it could be the difference between us deciding to look at an opportunity or not. So I'll stop at that. But I think the transparency and the accuracy is very, very important, and being able to have access to that as a financier is critical to us. So I'll stop there. Happy to expand more on it if there's specific follow-ups on it.
Thanks, Farai, for bringing that issue of transparency and accuracy related data solutions that needs to be there at clean cooking company level or at any borrower level that Africa Go Green is looking at. I would go to Juliet. Juliet, you coming from, coming to the carbon markets. Sorry, let me go to the other question is, as you have worked with a lot of clean cooking manufacturers, right? And what level of digitization you see in this sector? And what would be the digitization gaps you feel that is a need to address at clean cooking company level for even having an effective carbon project going on at these clean cooking companies. So if you can just share your views on that and based on the work that Canopy Energy is doing.
So actually, that's a good question. What I've observed is that in general, it's not just the manufacturers, but over the whole clean cooking chain, among all the different actors, the level of digitization is usually pretty low, because we're working with a lot of NGOs in developing countries, sometimes in rural areas, and they don't always have access to this technology, or they're not like used to using their phone or to have everything on computers, for example. And that does create a huge gap for me as a project developer, because on the other hand, I have the certification standards that is requiring a lot of information, whether it's on the stoves, on the beneficiaries. Like, to give you an idea, for each of our projects, we usually distribute 50,000 cook stoves over a period of 2 years. And and on all of these stoves, we're going to need so a lot of forms filled by the beneficiaries with the names, the addresses, the GPS coordinates. I mean, that's just a lot of data. There's a lot of data on the field, and then there is a lot of data that are required by the standards as tests on the stoves or surveys on the cooking habits. And there are some tools available for the NGOs to collect this data. And for example, I know that in Rwanda we're using Kobo Toolbox. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's quite useful because it enables us to create our own service. But the problem is it's not always properly used. For example, it happened to us at some point that we realized that the data collector on the field were actually printing the surveys and filling them manually, and then having to transcript everything into a computer, which is a huge loss of time. It's not that the application or the platform is not functional, but however, it's not being used. So there is definitely a need for something that would be, maybe centralizing all the information, or that would be easy accessible even in places where they don't have Wi-Fi, because it's sometimes the case in the part of the world where we operate. So yeah, there's definitely a large room of improvement regarding digital technologies, especially when it comes to data collection. But overall, it's on the whole chain, really.
Thank you for, so eventually what in a sense you're saying is carbon projects are data heavy. And you need digital solutions to really churn out that data and the analytics behind it to get into the carbon projects bandwagon. And thanks for highlighting that. And Farai, you were talking about the transparency and accuracy aspect of thing. But as a financial institution, coming to you, Farai, your institution itself would be having a level of digitization, right? You would be using digital product services for your own business processes, decision-making, underwriting processes, what you have. And you have a borrower here, which is not digitized enough, or doesn't have a digital kind of data that they can provide you. And what kind of, constraints that creates at your end as a financier, as an investor? And what kind of transaction costs are we talking about here?
So that's actually interesting. But one thing I'd like to point out, which a lot of borrowers then don't realize, is it goes beyond making the investment today. It also goes to managing the portfolio post-investment and collecting information. So digitization is actually very, very important in that respect. Now, just sort of going back to what you asked in terms of due diligence and transaction costs and what we use, we find that the less digitized a transaction is, or a project is, the longer it takes to carry out due diligence. And that is because you do not have access to information in a manner that is easy for you to manipulate and to work with. You need to get all that data, put it into a form that is easy for you to work with, and then start manipulating it. Now, in terms of costs, right, if you think about it from, like I said, we work with a number of advisors. right? Some of them being lawyers, some of them being consultants and sector specialists, right? The moment they need to spend more time trying to decipher and go, especially if it's lawyers that are charging you by the hour, you find your costs go up incrementally, right? You're talking of, from a cost perspective, anything from, we think transactions should cost anything up to about 200,000, 300,000 all in total costs. The moment you're not digital and you're having to spend more time collecting information, and you're looking at that cost sort of going up by at least 20, 30%, right? And then you think about the time of the investment team itself, myself and my team, how much time we're spending in terms of trying to put the information in a way that is easy for us to read and then easy for us to do an analysis on. So I think when you look at it from a cost perspective, you're starting to run up anything up from 20% up. You are going into time costs, which for us is important when you are trying to deploy capital. You quickly decide, well, is the due diligence effort on this transaction worth it at the end of the day? Because beyond a certain level, the costs stop making sense, right? So if you're doing a transaction and it's $1 million, for instance, or $2 million you want to invest, and your transaction costs run up to, say, 300,000, 400,000, because there isn't a solution that allows you to manage your due diligence effectively, that transaction stops making sense for us, if you know what I mean. So I think it's important for borrowers to be able to have solutions that allow lenders and investors to quickly understand their business, to quickly understand the key financial parameters they're dealing with, to quickly understand, if you think of carbon projects, think of clean cooking solutions, or stoves that are working on a pay-go basis, how those loan books are operating, what the repayment rates are. And unless that information is in an ERP system, and we can extract it and we can see, okay, these are the things that are, past due, how are they managing their collections? If I have to go and do that manually, a transaction that should take us 3 months, it's going to take us 6 months, it's going to take us 9 months, and you run into deal fatigue. The other side is when we look at our portfolio management, right? So once we do the investment, we have a team within Lions that's called portfolio analysis and risk management, right? And their role is to collect data on a periodic basis from borrowers, to carry out analysis on performance of the portfolio, and to give us any early warning signs that we need in terms of whether the borrowers or the loans are performing as we expect. And part of the requirement is for borrowers to plug into a system where they need to log their operating information, right, once they become a client of ours. So it's important to be digitized, not only to make the investment process simpler, but more so to make the management of the asset and the loan simpler going forward. And so we think about that when we're looking at an opportunity, and how it fits into how we want to be able to collect, synthesize, and make decisions on an investment and on a portfolio company once we've done the investment. So I'll sort of leave it there, but that's, in a nutshell, costs go up at least 20%, time goes up, and then it becomes difficult for us to manage the asset on the other side once we've done the investment.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. And of course, the costs are also there at the clean cooking company side of things, if you're talking about ERPs and other solutions. But there would be some ways out that I believe that we can discuss more on. And Juliet, the same question is for you, but from a whole carbon project developer perspective, as you interface with the carbon markets, carbon credit buyers, and there is a set of kind of conditionalities in terms of information that's required, both at a static level and a dynamic level, and how digital can play a role in terms of your efficiency and effectiveness of processes that meets the market requirements that's there. And in that regard, what level of digitization at your level and at the clean cooking level would enable that carbon market linkages, and how do you see that? What the gaps are in that?
So as you said, Farai, the buyers are asking for a lot of various characteristics on the projects and the carbon credits they're buying. And it can go from the location, which is something easy to answer, to like precise social and environmental impacts. And the environmental impacts is covered by the standards because that's what they're certifying when they're issuing the credits. But what is I feel important to understood is that not all credits have the same value. And they testify that an environmental impact happened and they quantify it. But then from two projects, it's not really the same product, because the buyers are like, they have their specific need and they're going to want to invest, for example, in a country where they have a subsidy, or they are very keen to invest in projects that help with health. So that's the case for clean cooking projects. And they want, for example, a vintage, so a reduction, a year where the reduction of emission, where the reduction of the emission happened, that is maybe like less than 2 years ago. So they have a lot of different characteristics, a lot of different needs, and they ask for the credits to have specific characteristics. And of course, having some sort of market would help with finding potential buyers for us. So have like to maybe ease the connection between the project developers and the buyers. And this solution, it's the same than the application for other platform for the developers. They do exist. I mean, I've run into some indicators in some marketplaces to sell carbon credits, but the problem is that all these characteristics are kind of lost. For example, now I think they separate not nature-based credits, and energy efficiency credits, but they don't separate the vintage of the credits. They don't, like, when we are buying credits on this platform, I feel like we don't know what projects it's linked to and what were the co-benefices for the population. Sometimes we don't even know the methodologies or the standards, which is really important because some of them are more demanding than others. So the buyers, as you said, for like the due diligence is really long on the credits or on the projects because there's so many information. And I feel like a market, like a good marketplace would take this into account. And I feel, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like this doesn't exist so far. I haven't seen at least a marketplace that would be easy to use, that would facilitate the due diligence for the buyers, and that would still like give all the information on the credits and projects. So yeah, probably it would help. Yeah, I think it would help us to identify potential buyers, but I think it would help the buyers with their due diligence, which is what you were saying, Farai.
That's an important point that you have brought up in terms of the due diligence aspect of things, also from a carbon-free developer perspective. And Farai, just coming back to you, I believe Africa Go Green Fund is also looking at or opening up to pre-financing carbon projects. I think that was something of a discussion we were having earlier. And once you're doing that, or in fact, you're in the process of it, but as a financing agency, what are the financial decision aspects you're looking at? And, you know, in that whole space of pre-financing carbon projects, not the normal project finance that you have been doing, or the corporate financing aspects of things that you have been doing on the debt side, but now coming into the carbon project side of things, and as a financier and investor, what is the level of digitization you would look into? Means, are there any conditionalities that you look into or would be looking into in terms of your decision making or risk mitigation aspects of things when you look at carbon receivable space, anything of that sort?
Yeah. So it goes back to exactly what Juliette was saying now, right? Yeah. Which is, when you look at carbon projects, the thing is, you are basing your investment on, in the case of cookstoves that have been delivered into a market, right? That should be generating X amount of carbon credits based on usage, right? And it becomes really important at that point to be able to have access to that information of, because these projects have to be audited on an annual basis to determine how much carbon they're each producing. There's things like stoves dropping off. So things we look at are things like stove drop-off rate, right? But you can only do that if you have access and you're digitized, and we've got X number of projects or stoves in the market, and the drop-off rate has been X, right? So unless you have access to that information and unless it's digitized, that's it. Another thing we're looking at is how often is the stove being used, right? So you talk of drop-off rate, that stove's not gonna be, but if you're in a situation where in a household that has 3 or 4 or multiple cooking solutions that they can use, right? We also try to understand how much of the time is the stove we have financed being used, because the other thing you don't want to do is overclaiming credits for a stove that probably isn't working at 100% of the time and is probably working 33% of the time. And how do you solve for that, right? That is, again, digitization and access to information, right? So those are the things we look at. What do we also look at? We're also looking at the quality of the carbon. Like Julieta said, I mean, these carbon credits are different. Each carbon credit is different. It's going to be priced differently because of, the co-benefits that are there because of, whether it is a charcoal stove versus a wood stove, whether it is, LPG versus, and all of those things are really important. So you need to be able to speak to the type of that credit and its quality, and that is informed by access to that information, your drop-off rates, your usage rates on the carbon projects. You're also then looking at what price these carbon credits can fetch, and those are informed by some of these things. The other non-financial things we're starting to look at as we're looking at carbon projects is the experience of these carbon project developers in developing carbon projects, right? Do they have the experience in getting the VPAs in place? Do they have the experience in running and administering an annual audit and collection of information, again, going back to data capabilities? Are they capable of running this into the future? Because remember, as a lender, we do not own these assets. We cannot force strategy. So it becomes very important upfront to understand some of these things and get clarity on them. So as we're opening up to carbon projects, and as we're starting to look at financing for clean cooking companies on the back of carbon projects, these things become important, right? So I'm happy to expand or touch on other points you feel need to be touched on there, but that's basically how we're looking at it at the moment. And we're hoping to support a couple of pure carbon projects this year. But again, like I say, we're looking at how are you going to monitor the carbon generation in the future, and that is a very, very key aspect for us at the moment, and the usage and the drop-off rates of these stoves going into the market. So I'll stop there and happy to answer any follow-on question you might have.
Great. Means this brings out the whole aspect of, we have been talking about the digitization level, both at the carbon project developer, the market side, and the financing side of things. But from a market perspective also, when we talk about this data availability and digitization, it also means there is a need for enhanced capacities and capabilities at various organization levels, right from a manufacturer to a distributor in the whole supply chain, and also actors, stakeholders in this chain, if you're talking about carbon markets, the carbon project developers and others. And it also brings to a question about the level of digital investment versus carbon revenues versus path to profitability. It's a question that's always there, and of course there have been some studies talking about 3.8x and all of that. But and this is a question both to you, from a financier point of view, investor point of view, what is the kind of capacity related or upfront investment related that would be required if you're looking at a whole digitization spectrum to be built, that really kind of brings in efficiency, lowers down your transaction cost as a financier, enables you to monitor and have a due diligence, and post-investment have a kind of a monitoring system in place to look at the portfolio. So what is the kind of, capacity and upfront investment on digitization or related to digitization that you are willing to support or include in your investment decisions? Do you have anything of that sort? Have financiers that you've seen and yourself looking into those aspects for building up those costs within it?
So, I mean, for us, when you're looking at it, look at from a clean cooking company perspective, it's one of those things we are capable of supporting a business with. Yeah, what that number is, I cannot say, because each company has to determine or decide what system works best for them and what solutions they need. But for us, as long as it is within the core business of what you're doing and creating this platform or investing in this platform that allows you to monitor your products and to digitize, it's something that we're willing to look at and consider funding for as part of the broader financing package we're putting together for a clean cooking company that is putting together a new production line that needs to be supported by an ERP system, for instance. So I don't know what the number is, Rajiv, but it is something we are capable and willing to fund within the context of supporting a clean cooking company that is producing products that will reduce emissions ultimately.
That's wonderful to know. And and the same question I'm posing to you, Juliet, as a carbon project developer and looking across Africa, what is of investments as a carbon project developer that you are making or plan to make, or you have seen in the sector being made by carbon project developers that addresses these capacity gaps and also the digitization gaps that is there in the clean cooking companies and others?
First of all, Rajiv, can you hear me well?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay.
I can.
Because you froze during the question, so I hope I'll be answering the right question.
Okay.
But what I understood would be was that.
You want me to repeat the question?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Okay. It's the same question that I'm asking. I was asking Farai, but Farai, I was asking him from an investor point of view, a financier point of view. And the same as I'm asking you from a carbon project developer point of view, if there are, and we know in the markets, there are capacity constraints at the clean cooking sector level, company level, in the supply chain, there are digitization needs that needs to happen for us to make it a more effective, efficient, link into the carbon markets, carbon financing happening, Farai giving investments. So all of that needs to happen. But as a carbon project developer, what is the level of investments you're making or you plan to make, or from your experience you see happening around, and what more needs to be done in this space?
So I don't know if my company would be willing to invest in the development of such projects. However, if a platform were to be developed, I would be thrilled to pay to have access to it and to make sure that we include it in our projects, because as I said, I think I said that before, but in a perfect world, like all project developers on clean cooking project would have a platform that centralizes all information, whether from the field or from the standards and the requirements from the standards. We're not really the type of company to invest in such projects, but maybe, that would be something to discuss, I guess, with the partners. What I would like to add, though, but you might all know that already, it's that carbon finance is a quite new market and it evolves a lot, whether it's in terms of requirement from the standards, or even the methodologies are evolving a lot. And one of the problems that I've had so far is that all these information are not centralized. Like every modification in the methodologies or every modification in the policies of the countries, which are, by the way, all different from one country to another, are moving really fast. And it's also our job to make sure that we're up to date. But that is something that, to me, that's a need of the carbon market. And especially, for example, on clean cooking, which is a more, let's say, delimited subject than just carbon finance overall. It would be to have a platform to follow all of these different evolution. Go ahead, Farai.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, I mean, I get where you're coming from. And for us, you know, similar to you, but we look at it in a broader context. But anyway, what I want to actually bring up is we've got this technical assistance facility, Rajiv. I don't know, we touched on it a bit. And what we're doing through this technical assistance facility within Africa Go Green is, you know, we can use this. It's given on a non-reimbursable grant basis, subject to at least a 20% participation by the beneficiary. And one of the things it's there for is for product development, right? And I think something such as trying to create a platform for carbon, as described by Juliette, that some that might be needed, some that technical assistance facility could potentially look at and consider financing. And that's the whole idea behind the technical assistance facility, is to create capacity within the market to enable investments that then reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And if this is a blockage, you know, it's something that I think the AGG Technical Assistance Facility could fund, or at least look to support alongside other partners to, in the first instance, carry out a feasibility study, but then also into the production of it, right? So I just wanted to put that out there. It is hard, and I see why a developer, I see why even us as a financier might struggle to do it, because it is, you know, a step detached from what we're supposed to be doing. But we have the solution through the technical assistance facility, where we could try and support something like this for the sector.
Great news. We have a TA facility to access. Thanks, Farai, for letting us know that. So I think it's, we can go on discussing this interesting topic, but I think we are nearing time, and would just like to see from the participants if there is any questions that you have that you would like the speakers to, panelists to respond to. I don't see a Q&A. Yeah, I think we have one from Alan, and Alan says, hi, we are a software project developer in Australia focusing on cook stove projects. We have only been operating for 9 months, but we have made significant progress during this time. How we can apply to this challenge given the requirement of 1 year's operating experience? Alan, that's a limitation, I would say, as of now, because the conditionality we have put into our RFAs is in terms of minimum 1 year. But of course, not to say that we cannot look forward to collaboration on other areas through other means. So let's be in touch with CCA and UNCDF, and we can look forward what we can do around it. But under this innovation challenge, we have this conditionality of 1 year operating. Well, Elana asks for sharing contacts of the presenters. So Farai, Juliette, I hope it's not a problem if we share your contacts. So Elana, as a response, as a thank you response, post this session, we are going to send you an email, and we will include the contact email IDs of both Juliette and Farai to connect to. Great. I don't see any other questions put forward too, but anybody, if you have any, just let us know. Okay, Farai, this is to you from Innocent, saying that, is African Go Green Fund operating in Uganda? And if so, can they support startups?
Thanks for the question. So the answer is yes. we are actually announcing an investment in Uganda this week. Now, in terms of whether we can support startups or not, it depends on the stage of growth that you are. If you are a startup today that is, 1 year in, it will probably be difficult for us because perhaps you're not quite ready for debt yet because we're a debt provider. We would be happy to support early stage businesses once they've gone at least one round of capital raising. So if you've done a Series A, for instance, and you're not going into a Series B, or we can come in at Series A in parallel to equity coming in. But we feel that providing debt to startups is perhaps not the best thing to do for them, as it chokes the business, and I think it requires more equity. So depending on where you are in your development, in your growth profile, we'd be able to support. But I think if you're really starting off today, it would be hard for us to support you.
Great, thanks, Farai. And of course, there was a question about whether Africa Green Fund does equity, and you have responded to that. But just for participants' knowledge, I believe you do guarantees, or guarantee is also not part of your portfolio.
No, that is correct. So we are able to offer guarantee products. There's a limit to which we can do so. In terms of our investment policy, our preference is to always do direct investments, but we are capable of providing guarantees on the back of a due diligence that we would have carried out.
Right, wonderful. Thanks, Farai. Thanks, Juliet. We don't have any more questions right now, and I think we are nearing the end. So I'll just, in case of you have any kind of queries, questions you have, please do write to us. And in terms of those applying and wanting to apply to this digital innovation, we would encourage you to apply, and you have the details that you can go through on this screen. You can see in terms of where to apply, the links that is there, and that's more to do with the digital solutions provider. But as a clean cooking company, if you are interested in partnering with digital solution providers and having to participate in potential events where you can connect with the digital innovators, please, there is also a link for you to fill in, and that link is provided on the screen. So please fill in that form, and we'll come to know about your interests, and we'll take it forward from there. So thanks a lot. Thank you for taking our time, Farai, Juliet, for participating and sharing your experiences. And thank you all for participating and hearing us. We look forward to further collaborations. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Have a nice day, nice evening. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye. Ciao.